She laughed softly, not the kind that filled a room, but the kind that slipped into it, quiet and warm, and stayed long after. I remember thinking that if I could bottle that sound, I'd keep it somewhere safe, like light in a jar. It wasn't supposed to feel like this. She was just my neighbor's friend, someone older, someone composed, someone I should have only nodded to in polite conversation. But when she turned toward me that first evening, something inside me went still, like the air had decided to listen. Her name was Elise. 40-something, maybe 45. The kind of woman who carried time like it had finally learned to respect her. There were small lines near her mouth, the kind that come from smiling at the wrong moments, not out of joy, but to keep from saying what you really mean. I was 26, still too young to know what to do with silence. She seemed fluent in it. The first time we really spoke, the rain had just stopped. We were both standing under the awning outside her friend's apartment, waiting, though neither of us seemed in a rush to go anywhere. The smell of wet pavement and coffee drifted from the corner cafe. She held a book under her arm, the pages curled from humidity. "You're dripping," she said, her voice low, the faintest trace of amusement in it. "Yeah," I said, brushing water from my sleeve. "Guess I didn't think the weather through." She smiled, not looking at me, but at the puddle forming between us. "People rarely do." The pause stretched, comfortable and uncomfortable all at once. Then she tilted her head slightly, studying me in that way older people sometimes do, as if they're trying to figure out whether you're old enough to understand something they once learned too late. Her gaze lingered, soft but unguarded. My heart did that uneven thing, the kind that isn't panic, but could become it. I asked about her book, mostly to stop myself from saying something stupid. She handed it to me, her fingers brushing mine, just barely, but enough to make the air change. "Old poetry," she said. "It's stubborn. Keeps meaning new things the older I get." I traced the damp cover with my thumb. "Maybe it's not the poem that changes." Her eyes flicked to mine, a quiet, assessing look. "Maybe not," she murmured. The street was empty now. The rain had stopped, but the world hadn't remembered how to move again yet. Somewhere, a car door slammed. She didn't flinch, but her fingers tightened slightly around the book. "I should," she started, then stopped. "So should I," I said at the same time. We both laughed, the kind that hides something fragile underneath. Her phone buzzed. She didn't check it. Just stood there, thumb resting against the screen, not pressing. The small muscles in her jaw shifted. Then she looked back up at me, and for a second, there wasn't any polite distance left between us. It wasn't what she said. It was how she looked at me. Like she recognized something, not about who I was, but about what I might become if I stayed in that moment too long. She stepped back first. "Good night," she said. "Good night," I answered, though either of us moved. A door opened somewhere behind her, a voice calling her name. She turned toward it, but before she walked away, she said quietly, almost to herself, "You shouldn't look at people like that." And then she was gone, leaving me standing there with the rain starting again, wondering if she meant me, or herself. I started finding reasons to pass by her building. Sometimes I told myself it was coincidence. The route just happened to take me past her window, that second-story glow where shadows moved softly behind the curtains. But the truth was quieter and harder to excuse. I just wanted to know she was still there. The second time we spoke, it was in daylight. She was sitting at the small cafe near the end of the block, sunlight resting on her hair, reading again. I hesitated at the corner before walking over, rehearsing something casual, something that wouldn't sound like what it was. "Twice in 1 week," I said. She looked up, her expression unreadable for a moment, then softened. "You make it sound like fate." "Maybe it is," I said, then regretted it. Her lips curved, not quite a smile. "Careful. You're too young to sound so certain about things like fate." I sat across from her before she could tell me not to. The table between us was small, metal warmed by sun. I watched the condensation slide down her glass of iced tea. She didn't move her hand away when mine brushed it by accident, Or maybe not by accident. So, she said, leaning back, what is it you do, besides appearing in doorways and rainstorms? I'm a photographer, I said. Mostly small stuff, local shoots, portraits. Trying to make something that lasts. She looked at me then, really looked. And do you? I hesitated. Sometimes. But it's easier to take pictures of people who don't notice you. Something flickered across her face, something that looked like recognition. She took a slow sip, eyes never leaving mine. You'd hate photographing me, then. I notice everything. I believed her. She was married once. I learned that later, when she mentioned it offhand, the way you mention an old injury that still aches when it rains. We were good at silence, she said. That's all I remember. It explained the way she paused before answering things. The way her laughter sometimes felt borrowed. I wanted to ask more, but her phone buzzed again, always that same tone, short, distant. She turned it over on the table, face down. We sat there longer than we should have. The air between us had that fragile stillness again, something not meant to be held, but impossible to release. When she stood to leave, her hand brushed my shoulder. It wasn't a long touch, barely a moment, but it burned in memory the way sunlight does behind your eyelids. You'll ruin your reputation, she said lightly. By having coffee? By looking at me that way. She smiled, but her voice wasn't teasing anymore. It was warning, soft, but real. As she turned to go, she reached out, fingers grazing my sleeve as if to steady herself, then stopped. For a second, she stayed like that, her breath close enough that I could feel it against my neck, her pulse a quiet rhythm in the space between us. Then she stepped back. Next time, she said, don't make it look like fate. I nodded, but neither of us believed it started with a message she didn't mean to send. A photograph, a table half cleared, 2 cups, and a line of sunlight cutting across it. No caption, no explanation. Just that. I stared at it for too long before typing back, beautiful light. A minute later she replied, wrong number. Or maybe not. That was all it took. We met again a few days later, this time inside her apartment, the first floor, the window half open to the evening air. She'd called it a favor, asking me to look at her old camera, something she hadn't used in years. But when I arrived, the camera was sitting untouched on the counter, and she was standing near the window, sleeves rolled up, glass of wine in hand. It still works, I said, checking the lens. She smiled faintly. Good. I wasn't sure. About the camera? Her eyes lifted to mine. About calling you. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full of things we weren't saying. The ticking clock in the next room sounded louder than it should have. She walked closer, slow enough for me to count the breaths between us. Her perfume, not floral, something warmer, like cedar and citrus, settled around me. She stopped just close enough that I could see the faint pulse at her throat. You make it hard to forget my age, she said quietly. I don't notice it, I answered, though it wasn't true. I noticed everything, the way her movements carried years of practiced restraint, the way she held eye contact like it might undo her. She reached for the camera in my hands, her fingers brushing mine. The contact was small, unplanned, but neither of us moved away. And then came the sound, a knock at the door. Sharp. Immediate. Her breath caught. She stepped back quickly, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, pretending to adjust the window curtain. I stood frozen, heartbeat in my throat. It's just Marie, she whispered. My friend from next door. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. She opened the door just enough to speak through it. Hey, can I call you later? I've got someone helping with the camera. Marie's voice was faint, curious. Oh? Didn't know you were into photography again. Just a hobby. When the door closed, she leaned against it, exhaling slowly. Her eyes met mine, wide, alert, something close to panic beneath the surface. That, she said, was almost very stupid. I nodded, stepping closer. But it wasn't. No, she said. Not yet. We stood inches apart now, the air thick with everything unsaid. Her hand lifted, hesitated, then touched my shirt, not pulling, just resting there. I could feel the tremor in her fingers. You should go, she said. I know. But I didn't move. She looked up at me, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the sound of our breathing, shallow, uneven, synchronized. Her gaze dropped to my mouth, lingered, then flicked away. If I'd leaned in then, it would have happened. But she turned her head slightly, her hair brushing my cheek, her voice breaking the spell. Next time, she whispered, don't let me call you. And still, her hand stayed on my chest a second longer, as if she didn't quite mean it. It happened on a night that wasn't supposed to mean anything. She'd invited me to show her the photos I'd taken that week, city corners, light on glass, strangers mid-step. It was innocent enough, at least how she said it. But by then, innocent didn't mean what it used to. Her apartment smelled faintly of rain again. The window was open, curtains stirring. She wore her hair up, loose strands falling against her neck. I tried not to stare. I failed. Show me, she said, nodding to my camera. I sat beside her on the couch, scrolling through the pictures. My knee brushed hers once, twice. She didn't move. Her hand rested on the back cushion, fingers barely touching my shoulder. Every photograph blurred into another, light, shadow, her reflection in the dark TV screen. When I looked at her instead of the camera, she was already watching me. You see the world differently, she said. Like it's trying to tell you something you can't quite hear. Her voice was low, almost private. Maybe, I said. Maybe I just wanted to look back. She smiled faintly. Careful. You sound like a man who's in love with ghosts. I'm not, I said. Just someone who wants to stop pretending. That made her still. She turned away, looking out the window as the rain began again, the sound of it soft against the glass. You don't know what you're doing, she whispered. You think you do, but you don't. I leaned forward, not touching her, but close enough that my breath caught against her shoulder. Then tell me. She exhaled shakily, eyes closing. You make me feel 25 again. And that terrifies me. Her voice cracked on the last word. I reached up, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. She didn't pull away this time, just turned her face slightly toward my hand, her cheek grazing my knuckles. Elise, I said, the name feeling dangerous now. She opened her eyes slowly. Don't. But she didn't move. Her hand came up, almost unconsciously, and rested against my collar, fingers curling in the fabric like she needed to steady herself. The distance between us dissolved. I could feel her warmth, the faint tremor in her breath. I shouldn't want this, she said. I don't think you get to choose, I answered. She looked at me then, a look that felt like falling and landing at the same time. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The room was too quiet. Even the rain outside seemed to wait. I leaned in, close enough that our foreheads nearly touched. Her eyes flicked to my lips, then back again. She whispered, This can't happen. I whispered back. Then why are you shaking? Her breath hitched, a soft, involuntary sound. And just as the space between us disappeared, her phone lit up on the table. A name glowed across the screen. She froze. The sound of it buzzing filled the silence like a warning. Her fingers tightened on my shirt, not pulling me closer, not pushing me away. Just holding on. Neither of us moved. The next time I saw her, she didn't look like someone who'd slept. There were shadows under her eyes, a stillness to her face that hadn't been there before. I almost didn't knock, almost walked away. But she opened the door before I could decide. You shouldn't be here, she said. You texted me, I said quietly, holding up my phone. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes flicked to the screen. That wasn't meant for you. My throat tightened. Then who was it meant for? She turned and walked deeper into the apartment, leaving the door open, an invitation or a dismissal, I couldn't tell. I followed anyway. Her living room was darker than usual. Curtains half drawn, wine glass on the table, untouched. I caught a glimpse of another phone, her work one, buzzing silently under a pile of mail. A message preview flashed and disappeared before I could read it. She stopped at the window, her reflection faint in the glass. "He knows," she said finally. I waited. "My ex," she clarified. "He called last night. Said someone told him I've been seen around with someone younger. That I'm making a fool of myself." The words hit harder than I expected. "He's wrong." "Is he?" she asked, turning toward me. "Because I don't even know what this is anymore." Her voice wavered, not anger, not sadness, something more fragile. I took a step closer. "You know exactly what this is." She shook her head, but didn't move away. "You don't understand what it costs me to be here. Then why do you keep letting me in?" That made her laugh, one sharp, broken sound that died too quickly. "Because I don't know how not to." We stood there, neither able to move. Her hands were at her sides, trembling slightly. I reached out, but she flinched, not from me, from herself. "Last night," she said, quieter now, "I told him I was alone. I lied." I swallowed. "You didn't owe him the truth." "Maybe not," she said. "But I owed it to myself. And I didn't give it." Her honesty stung more than I wanted it to. She turned her head away, pressing her fingertips against the windowpane. "He said he's coming by next week. To talk." I felt the air shift. The weight of something ending before it even began. "So that's it?" I asked. Her eyes glistened in the fading light. "I don't know what it is. But it can't survive being seen." I stepped behind her, close enough that I could feel the heat of her back through her thin sweater. My voice was low. "Then we don't let it be seen." She closed her eyes, exhaling. "You make it sound simple." "Maybe it is." Her reflection met mine in the glass, two blurred outlines, too close to separate. She turned then, slowly, her hand brushing against my chest as she looked up at me. "This will ruin something," she said. "I know." Either of us stepped away. The world outside was gray, silent, waiting. She whispered something I almost didn't catch. "Then let it." The night felt heavier than usual, the kind of heat that makes everything slow down, like the world itself is waiting for something to happen. I hadn't planned to see her again so soon, but plans had stopped mattering a long time ago. When she opened the door, she didn't speak. She just stepped aside, and I walked in. The room was dim, one lamp on, golden light spilling over the floor. She wore no makeup, hair loose around her shoulders, a softness that made her look younger and more breakable than I'd ever seen her. "You shouldn't have come," she said, though her voice wasn't convincing. "I know." She moved to close the door, but her hand paused on the knob. The silence between us was thick, stretching taut. "Elise," I said quietly, "if this is the last time, don't." She turned, eyes shining with something I couldn't name. "Don't make it sound like goodbye." "Then what is it?" She took a step closer. "It's madness." "Maybe," I said, stepping closer too. "But it's ours." Her breath trembled. The space between us disappeared in slow degrees, the air charged, pulsing with something that felt both dangerous and familiar. My hand lifted, almost without permission, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Her skin warmed beneath my fingertips. She closed her eyes, just for a second, as if the smallest touch might undo her. "You have no idea what you're doing to me," she whispered. "I do," I said. "Because it's the same thing you're doing to me." Her laugh was quiet and broken, swallowed almost immediately by the weight of the moment. I could feel her heartbeat through the thin fabric between us, fast and uneven. "You'll regret this," she said. "Maybe. But not tonight." Her eyes lifted to mine, and in them, I saw everything we hadn't said, the restraint, the fear, the pull that kept dragging us back no matter how far we tried to step away. She reached for me then, fingers curling around the back of my neck. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, But it might as well have been. Her forehead rested against mine, breath warm, shaky. "This can't be fixed," she murmured. "Maybe it doesn't need to be." Her hands slid down, stopping against my chest. I covered them with mine. For a long time, neither of us moved. Then, softly, "I don't want to hide anymore." Something inside me broke open at that. Not from pain, from the sudden, terrifying honesty of it. I tilted my head slightly, close enough to taste the air between us, to feel her lips brush mine without touching. The world narrowed to that fraction of distance. Her voice was barely sound. "Then don't." And for a heartbeat, everything stilled, her breath, the hum of the lamp, the ache that had been building since the rain. We didn't need to cross the line to know we'd already done it. When she finally stepped back, her eyes were wet, but steady. "Now you know," she said, "what this really was." I nodded. "I always did." The truth sat between us, fragile, final, impossibly real. Outside, the rain began again. Days passed before I saw her again. Not because we planned it that way. Life just has a way of pausing after something that big, like it needs time to catch its breath. When she finally called, her voice was soft, almost uncertain. "There's still a few things here you left behind," she said. It wasn't true, I hadn't left anything. But I understood what she meant. I went. The evening was cool, the air clearer than it had been in weeks. Her window lights spilled out onto the street, the same warm gold that had started all of this. She opened the door before I knocked, as if she'd been standing there waiting. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled, small, tired, but real. "Coffee?" I nodded. "Yeah." The kettle whistled, the sound grounding us both. She moved quietly around the kitchen, and I watched her, not the way I used to, hungry and uncertain, but with the kind of calm that comes after knowing the worst might already be over. When she handed me the mug, our fingers brushed. Just that, and everything that had been unsaid started breathing again between us. "I've been thinking," she said finally, "about all the reasons this shouldn't work. And?" Her mouth curved, the faintest hint of a smirk. "I can't find one that feels bigger than the reason I want it to." I didn't answer right away. I just stepped closer until her back met the counter. She didn't move away this time. My hand found hers, tentative at first, then steady. Her skin was cool, her pulse quick beneath my thumb. "I don't want to be a mistake you remember," I said quietly. "I want to be a choice you make." She looked up at me, eyes soft and sure. "Then stop worrying about what I'll regret." There it was, the quiet, final honesty that had always lived beneath everything she said. I reached up, brushing my knuckles against her cheek. She leaned into the touch, closing her eyes for a moment. I felt her exhale, slow, deep, like she was letting go of every careful thing she'd been holding. When she opened her eyes again, she whispered, "Stay." No hesitation this time. No explanations. Just one word that undid all the distance we tried to build. I set the mug down and pulled her closer, arms around her, her head resting against my chest. It wasn't fireworks or chaos, just warmth, breath, and the quiet rhythm of two people finally done pretending. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city hummed low and steady, like it was giving us permission to begin again. We stayed like that, no rush, no performance, just the realness of it. Her fingers traced lazy circles on my sleeve, and I thought of the first night I met her, how the air went still when she laughed. It did again now. And for the first time, it didn't feel like we were fighting something. It felt like we'd already survived it. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?